How are you doing today, Ian?
I'm doing well, and so hello to viewers, and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. I've got Ed Burlew here, who is, I think, the pinnacle of the firearms lawyer community. When I was in law school, Ed was the guy I wanted to be, essentially. So looking through, I remember when I was just very junior reading case law, I was seeing your echoes through the case law and seeing all the good work you'd done. And so you've been an inspiration for me, my entire legal career. So, and today I understand you've got some huge news for people. So,
well, I do. When it ended up happening, and I'm sorry about the color balance here. I'm not usually this red. I'm normally your color, but we have a technical glitch going on. Anyhow, well, what happened was this. I'll give a little backgrounding. For the last 23 years, when I've done, I have my 42 years of practicing law. I've concentrated on firearms law, done a lot of cases, hundreds and hundreds, and suddenly, in 2019, on 3 separate cases, slowly coming out were new disclosure items. And what they were was a report from the Registrar of Firearms showing the non-restricted firearms of these accused. Now, I'll say this, the accused in each of the 3 cases, the fact of what their firearms were that were non-restricted had zero, absolutely zero to do with what they were accused of. And like one guy was, used your air pistol wrongfully. Another guy, you insulted somebody. Another one, you may have thrown a beer can at your inebriated partner. Missed, of course. Had nothing to do with it. But they seized the guns, or tried to seize the guns, and up comes this information as part of disclosure, which is rather strange. Now, the other thing I do as a constant basis, and I think it's very important to do, is I always have my clients send in for freedom of information release. It's freedom of information because it's them, not ATIP, where I would ask, for their records from the CFO and from the Registrar of Firearms. Now, that has slowed down considerably in terms of response time from the RCMP, Registrar of Firearms, ever since Goodale became the minister in charge. I would always get it, like for 21 years, I was getting it at bang zoom within 30 days. He comes in, we're talking 6 months to a year, and I got to put in appeals. CFO Ontario, CFO Manitoba, CFO Alberta, boom, boom, get it right away within 2 weeks. But the RCMP slowed down. I don't know why. Anyway, so I of course I asked for this. Well, when it came in on one of the gentlemen, 2 of them I'm still waiting for now for a year and a half, dutifully appealing it. They won't give it to me. They cite all kinds of reasons. Of course it's COVID. It's everything's COVID. But they didn't tell me or my client about his pre-2012 guns when they gave us all the records the registrar had. Well, this really piqued my interest. So what was this that I received? And I started looking at it very critically. And I realized that it came from the Registrar of Firearms. And that it contained the listing of his pre-2012 firearms with everything except his registration certificate number. It had the FIN on it. It had everything else exactly dead on. And for the other client, I called him up and I said, do you have the registrations for your pre-2012 guns? He says, oh, yeah. Yeah. And send them to me. They matched up, except for the certificate number. And I said, well, do you have that gun? No, I haven't. I sold that years ago. He said I sold it in like 2015, 2012. No, 2014, I should say. And I said, well, that's interesting. So you have the registration certificate? Yeah. And the cops never seized that gun. No, they couldn't have. It was sold. Well, how else do you get this information? To me, that was the peak moment. The only way they had this was they had it sitting on a disc somewhere, and now they were telling this to every patrol officer who dared to ask. Every patrol officer. That's all you had to do. Hi, I'm a man in blue. I got my badge. Tell me about Burlew's guns. Tell me about Runkle's guns. Tell me about this person under investigation, what their guns are, including all of them. Well, the registrar was giving them that information. But when the person asked, he said, oh, no, we don't have that record. Now, the funny thing is that registration is only evidenced to you as an owner by the registration certificate. In fact, though, when a gun is associated to your license number, it's registered to you by the registrar. So these guns are still registered to the owner on the books of the registrar. That is upsetting. It's unlawful. The Harper government went through a lot to get this gone. They did the act in 2012 to eliminate the long gun registry. And then it was certified by the RCMP, who had an auditor come in and said, yes, we've gotten rid of that. And then let's see. There was one request from a journalist, and he happened to be the journalist who Kratian had grabbed by the throat when there was a protest going on. And but that just says who he is. But he said, I want a redacted copy of the registry, like you gave to the Ottawa Sun or something, or the Citizen. And they said, okay, well, so they put that aside, redacted, and eventually they gave it to him because he was entitled. And then the province of Quebec said, hey, we want to register all the guns in Quebec. And so they set aside a copy with all the guns from Quebec. And that was all locked up. That copy was eventually filed with the court in Quebec, the only copy. And it went up and up through the system, Superior Court Quebec, Quebec Court of Appeal, and then Supreme Court of Canada. And Quebec lost the case in Supreme Court of Canada. And they were able to establish their own registry, but they couldn't use this data. And the Supreme Court of Canada said it will be erased. And it was reported to the Supreme Court of Canada, yes, it has been erased. Wow. Now, let's go back and think about this. As well, there was a case that ended up in the Federal Court of Appeal in 2014, and it was the Information Commissioner suing the Ministry of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, because they said, you guys did not properly destroy this information. You did not have the authority. Well, in that case, the RCMP testified, and it was even reflected in the judgment, which I have over here on my right, which I don't want to waste my time getting out. I've read it enough times. On the second page of that judgment, it says that the RCMP had testified that this information was gone and could not be reconstructed. And that was accepted as being correct. It was accepted by the courts. Now, we have these incidents whereby even the commissioner of the RCMP had testified earlier to Parliament, it's all been destroyed. And then the auditor confirmed it's all been destroyed. And they testified to the courts, it's all been destroyed, we can't recreate it. And suddenly, I'm looking at it. And it's printed out in 2019, in July 2019. And I wondered, now this isn't right. Now, I get this by way of disclosure. Now I'm bound now, as every lawyer is, by the undertaking that I cannot reveal this without consent of the Crown, without consent of my client. I write to my clients and they give me written permission. You may reveal this. And what I did was, when I went to the Attorney General's office, because when I went to the Crown attorney said, well, that's above my pay level. I'm not too sure I can do this. And they said, you should try going straight to the Ontario AG. So I did. And it took about 6 weeks, and I got permission to reveal this. And because that's all I asked for, permission to reveal this to members of Parliament, federal members of Parliament. And I got that permission. And that's what I reiterated to my clients. So it would only go to members of Parliament. Because I figured, those are the guys, this is their information, they'll deal with it correctly. And so that's what I did. I gave it to some members of Parliament that I know. And it went up and down the chain and in and out and back and forth and around and around. I don't know how these politicians work, but they worked. And I guess what they did is they must have given it to a reporter. He broke the story. That's Brian Lilly. I did not give that to Brian Lilly. Not at all. I don't know exactly who gave it to him, but it was a member of Parliament, and that's been confirmed. He breaks the story, and here we are. So what does this mean? It means that the RCMP, but we don't know what level, have gone against the laws of Parliament, being the original bill to eliminate the long gun registry. Then it was upgraded, I think it was C-59. There was an upgrade to that was done. All this is by Vic Tays. Then, even more, Vic Tays, when he was in that position that's now occupied by Minister Blair, Vic Tays put in a regulation that dealt with as well, you cannot use this information. Well, you'd think that the RCMP would obey that. I'm finding something different happen. I don't know why or how. That is the question. Why and how did this happen? Hopefully that will be inquired to and we will know. But the other thing is, well, let's say I am the registrar, and what we want to know is, how did the registrar make the decision to use this information? Certainly the registrar may have received this, got it out of a drawer, somebody else came over to him, said, look what I got. And the registrar would say, wait a minute here, I think I have a problem with this. I think I better go to my superior and go up the chain of command and get my permission so I know I can use this properly. So how did that come about? Who gave the information? Who gave the consent? Who said, you got to do this? And then who said, well, not only can you use it, but I can go out to all the police who make the inquiry. That really is the most interesting aspect and the most upsetting aspect, because there's been no corrective, for lack of a better word, no remedial saying use this now. But how does it even exist? That's what is so upsetting. Where was it hidden away? Why? Why were the commissioner of the RCMP, the auditors, other RCMP officers, the registrar themselves able to say, it's gone, can't come back? Well, here it is.
And
now let's go from there.
Yeah, this raises a whole lot of questions. Maybe I'll just clarify for viewers because a lot of people won't know what disclosure is. But just when there's a criminal file, they have to provide the evidence that's being used against or potentially could be used for the accused. So that's provided to the lawyers or to the accused if they're self-represented. And as has been mentioned, it's under a lot of rules. I can't get a disclosure package and just decide to share it or use it for any purpose other than defending somebody. So that's what was being talked about in terms of those undertakings. But this is really concerning if there's a whole lot of... you mentioned that there was all this testimony. I assume that was under oath, so is perjury...
Oh, yes. Yes, that's why some people are saying, are raising the question whether or not there was contempt of Parliament. Other people are saying, was there contempt of court when this was done? And that goes back to who kept the copy. Was it one copy? Was it many copies? We don't know. So we don't know the knowledge chain. It could be that those people who testified had a complete and utter honest belief that it was gone and that it couldn't be reconstructed. So we shouldn't jump at them, but we should say that raises the issue that needs to be investigated. How did this occur? Who did not make the report? Who secreted this away? How did this come now to be back at work and document? See, that's the thing, document. We've all had, I'm going to shift gears now, there's always been the speculation, well, it must have been used in High River. I was deeply involved in that case. It must have been used here, it must have been used there. It's got to be used. You know, well, now we have hard black letter proof that it is published, that it is distributed, and that it is kept secret from that licensed person. And moreover, that it wasn't, you know, when this happened, it wasn't made public that this is being done. That's more secret.
Well, and if they plan to rely on this in future court cases, that opens the door to somebody being cross-examined as to the continuity of this. So that could get interesting.
It will, can I tell you? It will be when I get into the 117 applications that are being made against my clients for these guns.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. I hope there's written decisions on that.
Well, you know, when I get a witness on the stand, they don't get off till I'm done asking them all the right questions.
I do not agree with
that. Sometimes they want to run off the stand and hide. They can't. The judge makes them sit there and give me the answers.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. And of course, once it's in court, those transcripts become potentially public record. Anyone can order those up. So
yeah,
it might be real interesting to see what happens once the lid is blown off this. And that's,
well, I think the lid's blown off. Now the problem is who's going to be blamed. Who's going to roll over on who? Who's going to say, oh, not me. Oh, Harry did it. Oh, Joe did it. Mary, no, it was Mary, really. What's going on? You see, because we're not talking about a small amount of records. Oh, I found it for 3 clients. Wait a minute here. In 2012, as reported by the Commissioner of Firearms report, there were 1,729,000 PAL holders. That's the number of record holders, guns they have. Those people own 7 million guns. That's the number of secret gun files that there are. And what's easier maybe to explain this is every gun that's registered, my Colt 1911, right now, it has an FIN number on it because it was entered into the registry and it was given an FIN. When the importer brought it in and was put on the registry, bam, it got an FIN number. That's indelible. That stays with the gun. So that the police, whatever the administrative goodies are that are, have to be determined for good or for bad, they can trace the ownership of that gun. They can say, okay, well, so-and-so distributing had it, went to this dealer, went to this owner, went to that owner, and it should be here. Now, according to the gun information from the FIN, the registration certificate that I get is just evidence that I legally own it. That's all that is. But the gun is registered. So all of these guns, all of those pre-2012, April 2012, long guns are still registered. They're still in the records of the Registrar of Firearms. And they're parsed out and associated to their last registered owner. So they're, quote, registered to them. Because what else is registration except parsing something out and saying this is associated to you?
Well, and that's terrifying when you think of the fact that these are out of date, because imagine you have a shotgun and you had it back at the time of the registration. You sell it to somebody, they sell it to someone else, they sell it to someone else, and that person has a burglary and it ends up being stolen by a criminal and used at a crime scene. Now the police have there's been 6 different transactions there, but the police only see one. They're only going to see you had the shotgun per the registry, and now this criminal does. And so the police are going to suspect that was you, somehow passing it to them.
They're going to come, they're going to knock on your door, and they're going to say, Eddie, where were you on the night of April 9th? That's what they're going to say. And I'm going to say, whoa, I sold that thing. Oh, yeah, right. Who did you sell it to? Yeah, it was a long time ago. I don't quite remember. Oh, well, you better think about it. So this is what becomes important and terrifying at the same time. Now, let's put this in today's perspective. Okay? Today's perspective is OIC 2020-298. The May 1st gun grab, when a whole bunch of us woke up and were told, hey, you're criminals. Wow, your license doesn't allow you to own this gun anymore. Well, that cheered me right up that day. This cheers me up worse, because now any gun on there that was non-restricted, they're going to want to trace it. They talk specifically in the SOR. I'm not going to get into the FIN, the FRTs, but the Mini 14, the Mini 30, a whole bunch of other guns. They're going to say, now we can say who the last owner was in 2012. And there's going to be a knock on the door. David, where's your Mini 14? Oh, it's right here, officer. Good. Hand it in. You won't go to jail. Or it's going to be, geez, I sold that, officer. What's your evidence that you sold it? I'm telling you I sold it. There's no receipt. There's no nothing. Officer says, I don't believe you. I'm going to go get a warrant. Come in, tear your house apart. Because they got to find that gun, because it's prohibited. And I got to tell you, and I know, as lawyers, you go to a JP and you say, I have reason to believe that gun was in 2012 with that person. And I'm going to search their house and their car and their boat and their cottage and their farm and. Give me a warrant. Well, I got to tell you, that JP is going to sign that thing so quick. Whoosh. Done. And the police will come there in a very impolite way and do what they say their duty is.
I was just going to say, I'd be surprised if they did the knock on the door with the polite ask. It might well be that once the timeline on the amnesty expires, that they'll just go to a JP and say, we have evidence that on this day that they possessed it. There is no indication that they sold it or transferred it. And, we want a warrant. And your first sign of it might actually be them kicking down your door on the basis of a gun you haven't had for 5 years. And,
well, that's a possibility. But, I still find that police, the patrol officers, that they don't like to get directly confrontational. When pushed, they will, or if they have some evidence of violence, yeah, they will. But you're right, Ian, you're absolutely right. That could happen. And on some people, I'm sure that they may say, that's got to be my first step. And of course, you know how they execute those warrants? The first thing to do is to get you out of the house. Because they don't want the gun owner in the house with the gun when they go in. You got to get them out. They've said everything from, hey, your dog ran away, it's down the street, go chase your dog, to somebody stealing your car. Oh my God, I better come out and check this out. Or come out of there, loud hailed, come out of there, walk backwards slowly, get down on your knees, and put your arms behind you so we can hook you up with the handcuffs. Oh, so, there's that whole group, but they got to get the guy out of the house. And then once you're out, they got to send a SWAT team in, emergency task force, to clear the house to make sure nobody else is there. And that means going into closets, opening closets, breaking things open to make sure nobody's hiding in the closet that may be locked, or hiding in your gun room that may be locked. And once it's clear, then those guys leave, and in come the search team. And that's the way it has to be done. That's the way it's taught at police college for police safety. Yeah, you're right. It could get pretty nasty.
Yeah, and I've seen that lots of times. And with gun owners, sometimes they like to skip the notification step just because they assume you're dangerous. If we tell this guy that, if we ask the guy nicely for his gun, he might barricade himself and, all of this. And they don't need to justify any of that if they're just going straight to the warrant. So, I've seen them do it both ways. The nice way where they ask somebody to turn it in, and the not so nice way. And the not so nice way, as you say, is real not so nice. It
involves pepper spray and flashbangs.
Well, and people describing their kids face down on their front lawn, their wife face down on their front lawn, guns pointed at them. It's a terrifying thing.
Red dots dancing on your chest. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm right now thinking, what guns did I sell in between now and then?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And but I'm going to go back to another thing. Because I'm a collector, hobbyist, I'm going online a lot. I'm looking at inventory of all kinds of gun dealers across Canada, and I like that. And I do some trading, I do some buying, this and that. Well, you know what? I don't see very many Ruger Mini 14s or Mini 30s come up for sale used.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what happens with these, in my experience, is they're bought and they're kept. And people keep them. And they keep them for 10 years, and they keep them for 15 years. And really, the only reason they get sold is the old man gave them up, sold them for their retirement, or passed away. Now the estate's going to sell them. And then they go to the dealer. But otherwise, the people keep them. A lot of these non-restricted, I should say, they remain inert in people's collections, and for use. Hey, if I got a good coyote gun, I'm hanging on to that. And you can't beat a Mini 14 for doing that. The Mini 30, it's a nice deer gun. Nice moose gun. It doesn't have to shoot 1/4-inch groups. It's a meat gun. It's a hunter's gun. Get a little dirt on that. Get a little out in the rain. Who cares? Because it'll still work. It'll still run. It'll do its job. It'll bring that meat home. Put it in your freezer. Put it on your table. That's what it's designed to do, and it does it very well. Why would you get rid of that gun? You wouldn't.
Well, sometimes they get passed on to your friend or your kid. Is just sort of been able to get their own pal, pass on, the moose gun that they use. These are also, I think, really popular firearms on some reserves. I've seen a lot of Mini 30s, show up there.
Well, what the point I'm trying to make is that the chances are that the gun you had in 2012, you still have now. So
Yeah,
it's worth a door knock when it comes down to collecting the guns on the gun ban, the prohibition. Yeah, you know who you're going to go see. You got the list. You also know, well, there's so many of those out there, I can estimate how many I'm going to have to pay for. And then, well, you know, they got the records of what comes in. Okay, so we know that over the last 5 years, so many have come in. So we can estimate that there's this many more that we're going to have to pay for. That's how they came up with saying, oh, it's going to cost us $300 million. We're going to have to grab 200,000 guns. Otherwise, they're shadow boxing. They know. They've looked at the list. They've done the math. That's the only thing I can say makes sense. Because when the ministry says this with a surety, we are going to get this many guns. They're not shadow boxing. They've worked this out, and I think that it's reasonable to expect that they use this data.
I would be shocked if, when the amnesty expires, if they didn't end up using this data, if they've got it, and it sounds like they do. So I'm sure we'll be seeing that in a ton of files coming up.
Well, yeah, we'll see it in files, and I'll tell you, it's a sad day. It's a very sad day when we have to deal with that. And see, that's what makes what we have so much different than what New Zealand had. They didn't have a registry. Not at all.
Yeah.
We have this history of a registry that ran from 98 to 2012. 14 years. 7 million guns on that. That's just the non-restricteds. That's quite a crop to go through and to pick what you want. They know exactly what they want to do. Here's a tool to do it.
And it's
now, also when you get into the future, okay, so I go and I buy a gun that's a used gun, maybe from a dealer. Now the dealer's under C71, they say, and now we're getting that, well, C71 is going to be implemented. I guess they got the apps built that will allow this to happen, or they just don't care and they're going to do it. Because that was the reason why they said they didn't put C71 into effect. Oh, we got to do all this background work and put in some extra regulations. Hey, yeah, well, if they bring that in for us to have to call in to get approval on the sales. And of course, the dealers have to keep those records 20 years and has enough data to build a registry. And if we're talking used guns, and you just look and see how many used guns are ever for sale on any dealer, right? Hundreds and hundreds, thousands and thousands right now today. Well, if you've got the old FINs for those guns, you can build the registry. Even if you say, oh, I'll just put all this aside, you can have the app that'll go through, do the correlations, and kick it out. And if they haven't built that now, I'd be shocked. Because this is data manipulation that's needed. Just trying to cheer everybody up when I say this. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's, when you look at how many crimes the registry solved, which I think is still a big goose egg, every time they were asked to, pony up a crime that it solved, they either couldn't, or the examples they provided were just ridiculous. This guy who robbed somebody who they recognized his face. Well, we also looked up the registration. Like, well, they recognized his face, so the registry didn't help. But, it solved no crimes. Gun owners have been saying for years that all it was is a tool for, this police shopping list behavior. And I think we're going to be seeing that, unfortunately.
Well, another thing people don't realize is the old RWRS, the Restricted Weapons Registration System, pre-1998, was never erased. It's there. I've had many clients charged because of that. We're talking older folks. We're talking folks who did not move everything over into the new system, the left. I'm not going to go shooting with that gun. I don't need to register that. It's already on the RWRS. Then the cops come in for whatever reason. Could be a fire and they got to clear the house out. Could be that one of their sons acted up, one of their daughters acted up, or they were robbed and the cops come in and they check this out because they got to be due diligence. And all of a sudden they find, oh, you've got this gun, or where's the gun that's on the RWRS? Because we didn't see it transfer and we didn't see it moved over. And so they actively harvest the information on the RWRS. And then the charge gets laid. Oh, you have an unregistered handgun. You have an unregistered whatever. Okay? And sometimes they're prohibited. And then then the Crown's saying, hey, you're going to do a year in jail. And then my job gets to be really, really hard, and that's something that people don't even realize. It's still used today. That old data, it's still there. And I have to tell you, a lot of veterans did not move their guns over into the new system. They just said, that's good enough. They must do that themselves internally at the registry. And then they find out, well, no, my old C306 is not any good. What do you mean it's not any good? It was good enough then. It's good enough now. We're hooking you up and taking you to jail. Wow. And that's today. And that's old data. So old data is a very upsetting thing to have, especially when it's going to be inaccurate.
It creates a danger for innocent people who, if the data is wrong, you might be targeted just because of bad data.
Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely.
Well, and this is exactly what the conservatives were worried about when they said, get rid of it. It's going to be getting stale. Somebody could be getting prosecuted based on, bad data. It's better if it's just gone. And it's shocking that they were in a situation where they were able to say under oath, this data's gone, and it's not. Either they were lying to each other internally or they were lying to Parliament. Not going to be clear what's happened there, but
this is they created a Chinese wall and said, well, I'll do it, but I'm not going to tell anybody. And then the person who testifies does so honestly with a clear conscience, but was terribly misled. And that is of high concern because the people who testified were the top dogs. So who in the ranks did this? And then who brought it forward? Was there an overall plan? Was that plan created while the bill to eliminate the long gun registry was being debated, was moving through Parliament and the Senate? When did this occur? How did it occur? It's not something that's going to be sloughed off and answered easily by a bunch of questions in question period. It's quite a deep investigation because we're talking about millions of records of millions of people who were qualified by the RCMP themselves under Section 5 of the Firearms Act to be certified that they were nonviolent and responsible and trustworthy to have a firearm and obey all the strict laws thereto. It's an insult and an affront to the efforts of all these millions of people who worked hard to obey the law.
Well, and it seems like we're the primary target of the RCMP and the current government. They're not doing a whole lot to shut down the gang activity or, the like. but gun owners were the low-hanging fruit because they can have an old database on gun owners. They don't seem to have the same databases on, on criminal activity or anything like that. So
Well,
we're the easy target.
You see, like 2 years to a year ago, in that time period, there was a lot of talk. Well, we got to get these straw men. We got to get the straw dealers. Who's selling to them? By George, there weren't many. I mean, I actively searched for that with some other people. There would be 2 or 3 convictions a year. That's not much out of 2 million gun owners. It's insignificant in terms of insurance, in terms of enforcement. And what happens, it's no longer a topic because it yielded no fruit. It didn't pay off, but it was a reason to exploit, get on the soapbox, and to, well, I'll use the term gaslight. To gaslight the public into believing that we weren't be trusted. And so, how do you deal with that? When you have as well a media that says, we're not going to put the truth out there. Well, we got a bit of that now with CTV News on where the guns are really coming from, but we're not getting enough of that. Like what I'm going to take this to a different level now. Okay. Mm-hmm. What if I am an immigrant who came to Canada? I came from a regime that kept secret files on me. We know they're there. It's China, it's Russia, it's Iran, it's others. We can name numbers of them. Most of them are dictatorships, they're authoritarian states, and they use that secret data to oppress you. And you may have family still back there and they're under that impression. And you've come to Canada because it's a free land. You don't have that here. You come to a transparent country, transparent laws, and you can respect Parliament and you can respect the law enforcement. And suddenly you find, wait a minute here, they got secret files on good people that they've checked out, people that have been approved by the RCMP, and they're keeping secret files on them. Now you're worried, what do they have on me? What else can be done? What other secrets are hidden? This is not really just about guns. This is about secrecy. This is about not going along with the laws of Parliament. How else? Where else? What should be looked into? Because it's very upsetting. This is only the smoke from what may be a larger fire. And that's not a conspiracy theory. That's something that we have to look at. It has to be inquired of and not shut down on the brink of looking at it. But it has to be seriously looked at, and it can't wait. It can't wait years. It can't wait months. It's important stuff.
And whenever you detect this sort of thing, it's almost never somebody's first round. If the Law Society finds that somebody's been dipping into the trust account, they do a full audit, because it's not going to be the first time somebody's dipped in. It's going to be, you're going to find all sorts of problems. That's going to be a bad actor. If they're keeping one set of secret files, then they're probably keeping lots of sets of secret files. And, it's going to be something that goes beyond gun owners for sure. So even the people who don't have a whole lot of sympathy for gun owners should be concerned about this, because it's going to be their backyard too.
When I talk to families during this time, because I really dug into this in November. It's taken this long for it to really be organized, come out, and be tested. Okay? Because, I can go out there and I can say these things. But then members of parliament tested the information. Okay? They said, is this real? They checked into things. They looked at things. They were skeptical. I had to answer more questions. I had to do more things. And it had to be then looked at several before they said, yeah, well, we can give some credence to this. Because they weren't ready to do this. They didn't want to see this. Then they said, we have to see it. We have to talk about it. You know, it was something that, this is not something that goes bang, zoom, and is easily done. It took careful background and due diligence before it became public. And you're right, it goes beyond this, but this needs to be thoroughly investigated right down to where it started from and how far up the chain it went. Because it has to be fairly far up the chain because it's being used by a very top official, the Registrar of Firearms.
Well, yeah, I think this is quite shocking stuff when we're talking about, you know, them behaving in a way where essentially they want to keep secrets from the public. The RCMP should not be doing that. They want to keep secrets from Parliament. So we probably, I think, given a good overview of what's going on here. Anything you want to tell people just sort of to wrap up here?
People ask me, what can you do about this? How can you protect yourself? And the answer is, I really don't know. I really don't know. I guess the only thing to do is that if you sell a gun, make a note, put it away. And that way, if you ever get confronted about it, you got at least some evidence that, you know, you can face that inquiry with. You know, the idea you can gleefully say, oh, I lost in a boating accident. Well, that's not going to work too well. It just isn't going to work, you know, because, you know, it's not that you're going to have to report this. Well, you're going to have to report it when C-71 comes in. But certainly, the only defense against bad information is good, true information. You and I know that as lawyers. Every lawyer knows that. Every person who's been accused and who gets acquitted is because, in very many cases, the truth comes out. And that's what protects them.
Yeah, I mean, most people, I think, are not going to be in a position to have that documentation. So there's not a whole lot to be done, I guess, for most people. But that's, cross your fingers, I guess, that they're going to be too cautious to use this. But I don't think they will. I think we're going to see doors getting kicked down and, you know, the knock on the door that you were mentioning.
Well, we saw what happened in High River.
Yeah.
One of the significant things that you know, well, I can't help talking about it. In High River, one of the significant things was this. We have everybody evacuated. They're out. The military's in. The military stayed in until 4:30, I forget the day, sometime that June. And the military made the note that we are bugging out. We don't have to be here anymore because there is no longer any danger to human life. That was documented. That was a necessary finding by the military before they could leave. And they left. And then the police moved in and opened, 1,800 or 1,900 homes? Took all those guns. After that, and they didn't bring any 117 applications on that. They just said, we're taking them. Holy mackerel. So that has eroded the trust. When I read what's been going on after this story came out on social media, not just one, but several social medias, probably 6 social medias, people say we're not surprised, but they're all disappointed. They're all saying, well, we knew we couldn't trust the RCMP. Now we know for sure. Well, that's a hell of a thing to say. These people gun owners are, we are under strict rules. We have to abide by the law to keep our privilege, as it is, alive. And we're saying we don't trust those people who we have to go to get those permissions, those licenses, and those authorities. That's a terrible state of affairs for the RCMP and for us. I don't know how that will be solved. I don't know how that will be rebuilt. I don't see how that will be solved. I'm sorry to repeat that, but maybe that's the thing. That has to be worked on. Who can administer this? Who can rebuild that trust? Because right now, everybody's walking around just like they got hit in the solar plexus by Sonny Liston. That shows that I'm old. Sonny Liston.
Well, and
okay.
I think this connects as well to things like what we're seeing with the Section 74 things, where there's a legal framework and the RCMP say, through the registrar, we don't have to follow that. We can make up our own procedures. And it's really indicative of a police force that I think feels that they have escaped the legal confines that they should be under, and that they get to write their own rules.
Well, that means that they're acting as a political force, not as a peace force. And that's the root of what a police state is when those authorities who are in the enforcement community decide that they will create their own political agendas, they will create their own political responses, and they will hold citizenry to that. That is a police state. I don't see how that can be tolerated in Canada.
Scary thoughts, and the only thing to do is somebody's going to have to rein them in. But the current government doesn't seem to show any appetite for it, so we'll see. I guess that's probably a good place.
I think we should stop it right there, because otherwise we're just going to miss all the turkey hunting that's starting here in Ontario. And I may have to take the afternoon off tomorrow and go. Maybe I'll take the morning off. Go up to do some turkey shooting.
Well, I wish you luck. Hopefully you have some success there, because something to take the edge off this news.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. The way I do that is I get out there in the field and I do a little hunting, I do a little tracking. It's what keeps me going, buddy, because that shows me who I am and why I'm here. Especially when the ranges are all closed here in Ontario. That's a whole nother thing. Go hunting, go fishing, get outdoors.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for explaining, to our viewers what's going on here, because this is a big deal. This is huge, and there's nobody who's done more for the firearm community, I think, than you yourself. You're a giant in the field, and yeah. So thank you for everything you've done. It's, as I said, you've been an inspiration for me to get involved in this, and you're still swinging hard for the gun community, and it's really appreciated. And yeah, I'm
getting ready. Now you stop right there. I won't give up. That's all I am. Okay. All right. Okay, goodbye and good luck. Happy hunting.
Thank you for watching a great interview and a great bit of news from, again, one of the giants in the firearm legal community. I want to thank my Patreon supporters at the $50 level: Jason Elliott, D. Mo, Canada's National Firearms Association, Kyle Martin, Jean-Guy Toussaint, Ivo Nedev, CCFR, BCAMF.org, Andrew Schaefer, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited and Marc-Olivier Damour. And at the $20 level, Matt Ward, Mark Whittington, Dale Nesbitt, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, and Adam Meester. I also want to thank all of you at the $10 level who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you for watching, and I hope this has armed you with knowledge. This is a big one, folks, so thanks.